Hello and welcome. My name is Ashok Rajguru and I am your instructor. Today we'll be taking a case of a blocked nose. Now that might appear to be quite a simple case, but believe me, we are going to learn quite a few things. The objectives of this particular video are to understand the presenting symptoms of the patient, to learn the art of combining rubrics. This is very important because a common mistake made by many students and even practitioners is that they often add to their rubric count simply by repeating rubrics which mean the same symptom but are worded in a different language. The third objective is how to keep our analysis simple. What you're seeing on the screen is a Latin phrase which roughly translates to keep it simple. Then we will look at the analysis and how we build up on the data that we are having. And then we look at the initial follow-up. Now, the following video will tell us what happened to the patient after an apparently successful outcome. This case was published by H. Pathy, a professional homeopathy journal, in the May 2015 issue. You can read the whole case on the link that has been provided. You will find the link in the lesson as well. But otherwise, you can even follow it by just watching the video. So just sit back and relax. Let's now take a look at the presenting symptoms. This is a case of a male patient who was at that time 60 years of age. He was in a good state of health and he was not in any one of those typical medications which 60-year-olds normally take. I am referring to medications for blood pressure or for blood sugar control and similar such medicaments. He led a fairly active lifestyle and he was having a history of a persistent stuffy nose. Normally this nose would become stuffy after first having symptoms of an apparent hay fever. But over the years he realized that there was no particular allergen, there was no particular agent causing an allergy, although it would look like an allergic rhinitis or a hay fever attack. But the patient said that there was no particular allergen that could be identified or which could be considered as the trigger for his condition. According to the patient, he had come to understand that he would suffer such a condition anytime he was undergoing stress. It could be physical overwork, or it could be mental stress. It could be a challenging situation at home, in relationships, or at work. What is interesting to note is that when he came to me, he had recently relocated to Pune, which was a new city for him, and he had also changed his job and the nature of his work. So, but he did not say that that was a real challenge. I'm not aware if it was, but there was a change, and according to people who write on subjects relating to human factors, they note that there is a lot of stress involved if you're changing your job or if you're changing your home, your residence, or your city. So that could have been a trigger point, but we do not know for sure. Continuing with the symptoms, the patient reported that his attack, as he described his condition, would start with a runny nose. In fact, it would be a watery nasal discharge, like a running tap. Those are the words he used. And a few hours after that, it would be very burning and it would burn his nostrils. And in case the watery discharge dribbled or ran over his lips, even they would appear as if they have been scalded. Also, his attack would be accompanied with bouts of violent sneezing. he would get at least 5 to 10 sneezes at a time, which were very violent and that would really shake his whole body. His respiration was wheezy, especially when he was exhaling, and he had difficulty in expectoration. We could describe that as ineffectual hawking. He would make an attempt in trying to cough the phlegm out, but nothing would come out, and that would also be taking a lot of his energy and make him tired. His nose was stopped up and blocked, and lately he had been dreaming of people who were long dead, either people who were related to him in the family or his old friends who were long dead. So that was something new and something which was not happening with him earlier. Further, drafts of cold air would aggravate. His condition would aggravate after sexual intercourse. And he had to use Otrivin nasal spray for relief. The nose block would be so severe, he would be very uncomfortable with that, and then he would use this spray, which would help him for about a day or sometimes a day and a half. But he feared that it would become too frequent. So he used it very, very infrequently, only when the condition was very bad. And if his condition was still not improving, then sometimes he would take a cetrazine tablet, a 5 milligram tablet of that particular drug. Now, these complaints had been persisting for over 2 months. In fact, for 3 months, sorry. And it had been 3 months since he had moved into this new city in my neighborhood. He had not consulted any allopath because he trusted homeopathy, which was a very positive point, and he was very suspicious of what allopathy can do for him. So there we have one person who is seeking help from a homeopath, and that itself puts us on a pretty good footing as far as the patient-physician relationship is concerned. I would now like to talk about methodology. We must remember to keep it simple. There is a famous saying which says homeopathy is very simple until it gets complicated. So as homeopaths, we should try to keep it simple and not involve complexities or complications. Here is a Latin phrase which means simplicity is the sign of truth. Today we often use the term keep it simple or keep it simple silly, the KISS formula, which is indeed something we should always keep in mind when we are doing a homeopathic case. Another piece of advice from Boger, Cyrus Boger, is to avoid unproven remedies. Proven remedies have gone through a rigorous process of proving, which was exclusively devised by Hahnemann and which is the bedrock on which our entire concept and practice of homeopathy rests. So we should never turn away from that. Boger also tells us to avoid speculative themes like the doctrine of signatures or their modern versions of kingdoms and other such themes. They sound very profound and they sound very attractive, but they can lead to results which may not be very consistent or replicable. Another thing to remember is that symptoms are more important than a person's personality. In order to understand this concept, I would refer you to read Kent's lecture, in which he mentions that temperaments are not caused by provings and they do not change with any remedy. You as a person have a special identity, a special personality, which is the outcome of genetic factors, of your environmental factors, of so many other things, cultural factors, education, and you just can't simply shy away from them or overcome them with remedies. And the simple answer which Kent gives us is that there is no remedy which can change the personality or there is no remedy whose proving will bring about a different personality in its proving. So please remember that when you are using such things for your analysis. Another useful tool you should always remember to use is to combine rubrics. Combining rubrics means we must understand that rubrics in the repertory are derived from materia medica, and the materia medica derives from provings. So the language of the prover is first converted into the language of the materia medica, which is basically a easily readable document, and then it is converted into a rubric. So a lot is lost in that process. And depending on which repertory you are using, the same symptom could be worded differently. For example, let's take a look at this rubric in front of us, which is about wheezy breathing. If you hear a sound or a patient complains that he can hear wheezing when he is breathing, you could cover it with 3 or 4 of these rubrics. One is from the Bonninghausen's repertory, which says it's asthmatic wheezing, cough and expectoration. Lippe has got another one. Here is Nair's rubric. And I'm giving rubrics only from these old classical repertories, Bonninghausen and Lippe were contemporaries, of course. Nair and Kent perhaps were from the same generation, or Bourget in fact. So one has to be careful that you are not repeating, because if you keep repeating the same rubric 5 times, you are going to artificially weigh in a certain remedy, and that is going to distort your repertorial analysis. So please keep that in mind. Now, the rubrics chosen for this particular case were formed by combining various rubrics from Bourget, Bonninghausen, Lippe, and Nair's repertories. I have not used any modern repertory when I did this particular case. By modern, I mean not the synthesis nor the complete repertory, and not even Kent. Kent is very good for particulars, but we can discuss when and how to use the Kent's repertory to analyze a case in a later video. So the rubrics that came up for this particular case were cough asthmatic, which is a combined rubric. There was one which we took for the mind symptom of dreams of death, dying people, dead people. One for the respiratory system, where he had a difficulty in coughing out his phlegm. Violent sneezing, paroxysmal sneezing, all these are combined into one. And then nose obstructed, or a blocked nose is there in a number of rubrics, and they were all combined into one. Likewise, there are a few rubrics which talk about aggravation and amelioration, coition after. So that was also a combined rubric. And after having done that, the remedies that came up with those rubrics were, the top remedies were Kali Carb, Kali Bichromicum, Nux Vomica, Carboveg, Lycopodium, and Anacardium. You may remember we had mentioned that the patient had mentioned that he had a 3 a.m. and a 8 p.m. aggravation. So if we apply that filter, we find there are just 3 remedies which cover all the rubrics, which is Kali Carb, Nux Vomica, and Lycopodium. And if we use the fact that Kali Carb out of these 3 is having an affinity for the mucous membranes, then that becomes a remedy of choice. One need not really follow the sequence. You could start with an affinity of mucous membranes and then go for the 3 a.m. and 8 p.m. aggravation, and then you take the other rubrics. You'll still arrive at the same conclusion as I had done in this particular case. Now, the patient was given a dose of Kali Carb 30C, and he was asked to follow up after 3 weeks. The patient came back reporting that he was free from all the symptoms. He did not have a blocked nose. He did not have disturbance in sleep at 3 a.m. in the morning. The sneezing was gone. So it was a very good progress. Besides, he mentioned that he had a long-standing complaint of dandruff, which had also vanished. He had not mentioned that when I took the case. So that was yet another encouraging symptom. And if we do a further analysis in the materia medica, you will discover that kali carb does indeed cover that symptom also, even though it was not taken up into the repertorization. So I'll just summarize what we have covered in this video. We talked about the presenting symptoms of the patient, which were essentially like what a person would report if he is having allergic or non-allergic rhinitis or hay fever. Then we saw how to use the art of combining rubrics in order to make a very efficient and tight analysis. We also looked at the cautions which were mentioned by Bourget, which was relating to the personality types and the importance of using symptoms rather than personality types. Also, the importance of using proven remedies rather than remedies which have been derived by speculatory or speculation, by speculatory means. Then we came to the remedy choice, which was kali carb, and we saw no matter how you apply the filters, you are likely to come up with the same remedy. So the whole purpose of this continuation education credit unit is that each one of us, if we were to take this case in any part of the world with the same patient, we should have been able to come close enough to the same remedy. So that can only be done if we have a standardized method and we understand the principles that lie behind analysis, the principles that govern our materia medica and our repertories. And then finally we looked at the follow-up, which was very remarkable. 3 weeks the patient was relieved of all the symptoms and some other secondary symptoms which he had not mentioned, like the dandruff problem which he had. So that's all for now. In the next video, we will see that this patient came back and with the same symptoms which seem to have come back with a vengeance. So let's see how they turned out. As I had promised you earlier, this is not a simple cough and cold case. It has got more to it, and we are going to learn some very interesting facts. So till then, bye bye, and thank you very much for your attention. See you soon.